Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I am Spencer,
And I'm Katie.
and today
Today,
we're going to be talking about gene editing.
yes. So the WHO says genome editing is a method for making specific changes to the DNA of a cell or organism. It could be used to add, remove, or alter DNA in the genome. Human genome editing techniques can be used on somatic cells or non-heritable cells. And then germline cells, either not for reproduction or for reproduction. And we've got a little video here to explain CRISPR a little bit further. And this is CRISPR Explained from the Mayo Clinic.
In a document, if we suspect we've misspelled a word, we can use the find function to highlight the error and correct it or delete it. Within our DNA, that function is taken on by a system called CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR is short for clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. CRISPR consists of two components: the Cas9 protein that can cut DNA and a guide RNA that can recognize the sequence of DNA to be edited. To use CRISPR-Cas9, scientists first identify the sequence of the human genome that's causing a health problem. Then they create a specific guide RNA to recognize that particular stretch of A's, T's, G's, and C's in the DNA. The guide RNA is attached to the DNA cutting enzyme Cas9, and then this complex is introduced to the target cells. It locates the target letter sequence and cuts the DNA. At that point, scientists can then edit the existing genome by either modifying, deleting, or inserting new sequences. It effectively makes CRISPR-Cas9 a cut and paste tool for DNA editing. In the future, scientists hope to use CRISPR-Cas9 to develop critical advances in patient care or even cure lifelong inherited diseases.
So I like that video a lot because it gives a really good visual for how the technology works. I thought the visuals were really good.
The visual made sense, and I get, but how are they doing that? What are they doing? Like, how the COVID vaccine is an mRNA is it something like that, or how are they doing that? How are they getting into the cells, and how are they getting that small? Does it say? I don't. That's the only thing I'm confused on, because the rest of it makes sense, like cutting, like in editing.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
They
But
correct mutations at. I'm going to read this whole thing too, but it says they correct mutations at precise locations in the human genome.
But how are they getting into the human gene? That's my only. Like, do we have like is it like an actual? So how like we have.
I think it's they were like inserting the
But
protein.
I guess I think I'm being technical here. Like, I'm trying to, like, because you know how we have CT machines?
Like,
Yes, because we have CT machines, we have MRI machines, those make sense. But, like, is this like nanobots? I guess or do we have nanobots that are going in and doing this? Or is it, that's what I'm wondering, I guess. Like, the technical aspect of it. And I guess I don't, or is it just like a theory proposed, or is it something they've actually been able to do?
So, it doesn't really say how the technology does it. Okay, how does CRISPR get into the cell? The popular physical methods to introduce CRISPR components into cells are electroporation, nucleofection, and microinjection.
Okay, I understood one of those words.
Yeah, microinjection makes sense. Let's see, electroporation, if I'm even saying that right. The action or process of introducing DNA or chromosomes into bacteria cells or other cells using a pulse of electricity to briefly open the pores in the cell membranes.
Okay. So then they would inject that bacteria into us? Or is that just like...
I think Let me look that
Or
up.
is that maybe just the way that they're testing it, I guess, Or is that
Well, the electricity opens the pores in the cell membranes, and then, yeah, I think, and then they would insert the protein.
for bacteria, you said, right? Or is that just for cells in general?
Um, yeah, for bacteria or other cells.
Oh, okay.
And then nucleofection, an electroporation based transfection method which enables transfer of nucleic acids such as DNA and RNA into cells by applying a specific voltage and reagents.
Okay. That kind of sounds similar then, in a sense.
Yeah,
Like,
it sounds
but
like they're
except
related.
for, huh?
I said it sounds like they're related to each other.
Yeah. Except for like the second one has the reagents in it, but
Yeah,
because I don't think the first one did it. It was just
no,
electricity, wasn't it? Or like,
right.
not, that's a simplified. Obviously, I understand it's going to be more technical and in depth, but simplified is just like an electric shock in a sense, or something like that.
Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
yeah,
So those are the three methods that they use, it says, or
yes.
that's just okay. Have we done this to humans yet, or is this still
I think I'm pretty sure we have.
okay? Because
Let me
I know
double
that
check that though.
there's
I'm pretty sure
because I
it's
know gene
CRISPR.
editing itself can be very what's that word?
Um, it's being used in a clinical trial aimed at treating Leber's congenital amaurosis. And that was written in December of 2021.
Oh, okay. Because I know it used to be very controversial. Like I
Yeah,
remember a lot of people had and they probably still do, I guess. I'm not saying they don't, but I just remember before it was a very like I don't think there was enough support for it is what I would
yeah,
say. So I'm grateful that there is support for it now because I do think personally it will be a very beneficial thing as long as it's
yes,
used appropriately is the thing. But we'll
exactly.
talk about that in a bit.
Oh, yeah. And all right, so the Broad Institute says, since that, let me try that again. The Broad Institute says systems that can be programmed to target specific stretches of genetic code and to edit DNA at precise locations, as well as for other purposes, such as for new diagnostic tools. That would be the definition of CRISPR, I guess. With these systems, researchers can permanently modify genes in living cells and organisms, and in the future, may make it possible to correct mutations at precise locations in the human genome in order to treat genetic causes of disease. Other systems are now available. So I guess that was one system. Other systems are now available, such as CRISPR's Cas13s that target RNA, provide alternative the alternate avenues for use and with unique characteristics that have been leveraged for sensitive diagnostic tools such as Sherlock. CRISPR genome editing allows scientists to quickly create cell and animal models, which researchers can use to accelerate research into diseases such as cancer and mental illness. In addition, CRISPR is now being developed as a rapid diagnostic. So we've got some ethical questions. And I guess I'll ask them and then I'll answer them and then you can answer them.
That works, yes. Well, yeah, because we could just kind of have an open
We can go
discussion
back and
about the question. Yeah.
yeah. Is it right to change who children really are? Of course, eradicating debilitating diseases should be the goal, but when it comes to mental health, what qualifies as debilitating and what qualifies as simply a difference in thought? For example, with ADHD, there are many debilitating aspects to it, but there's also many positive aspects to it as well. There's pros and cons. Many of these debilitations are due to the way society is constructed and not necessarily due to the actual mental state of the patient.
So I would, yeah, I think, is it right to change who our children really are? So I guess to me, again, it depends on what you're doing it 4 in that aspect.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, ADHD, it can have some debilitating aspects, but to me, I don't think it is, and I don't I obviously personally don't see ADHD as a bad thing, and I don't see autism as a bad thing. I just think the way that our society functions right now, those people that have those, I guess we label them as mental ill. I don't know if I would call it an illness, but I think we label it technically as an illness, so I will call it what it is. I don't see those as illnesses, but I think that in our society, those illnesses make it hard to function. So I can see why some people definitely might not want their kids to suffer through that, and that's understandable. Me personally, if it was up to me, I probably, maybe if it was where we could address certain aspects of it, so
Yeah.
maybe like, because I definitely, it's a hard question, but I definitely, for me, I don't like to view like my ADHD as a bad thing personally. So I wouldn't want to necessarily fully remove it in a sense, because to me I do think it has some, I do think there are benefits to ADHD and autism.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to discredit anyone's experience with either, because they can be very debilitating at the same time. But I do think that there can be some positive qualities to those too. So maybe, but I also hate even labeling them as positive or negative qualities too, because that also is going to discredit people. And that is not my, like, that is not, I would never want to do that.
Yeah, and it's all on a spectrum.
Yes, yeah. But I don't, so I think it depends. Like, I think, I guess my whole thing on it is, I'm trying to think of how to, because I think it's multifaceted, I would say, because I think if we had the choice, we should have the choice. So if I don't per se see it as a problem, then I probably wouldn't remove it from my kids. But if somebody else sees it as a problem, then they might. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And on top of that, I don't even want, because sometimes I think there's always the narrative that some of these mental illnesses are like a teaching moment for the parents, but I don't think kids should not be something like a teaching moment. Like, kids' lives should not be used for you to learn and grow, if that makes sense. We should not, like, if somebody has a bias against autism, to me, having a kid with autism is
Oh.
not good for the kid. Like, yes, they may learn to accept autism, but they shouldn't have to learn to accept autism because their kid has autism. We should all accept autism
Yeah.
because we respect people. We shouldn't have to have it in our family to accept it. So that's my biggest issue with that whole thing. And but I also can see that if somebody, it's a hard topic. I don't ever think that if it came down to where we were forcefully removing it, even like depression, then I might be against that for sure, because that takes away choice, freedom, individuality in a sense. But I think if people want to kind of decide, like for me, maybe depression would be, if it's a gene. I don't even know if depression is genetic, I guess. I think there might be some factors that are genetic. I'd have to look into it. But if depression were solely genetic, because it's definitely not solely genetic, I know that. But if it were solely genetic and we could remove it, then maybe I would. But the ADHD, to me, I don't personally see as a bad thing, so maybe that I wouldn't, and then I would just help my children like learn to grow with that. Since I know that it's something that I deal with, I know that they may have it, so I can kind of watch for that earlier and help them, in a sense, navigate life with that. But I understand that some people maybe like don't have much experience with it, so they may, like, it may be more of a stress or burden to them. And I'm not saying that makes it right or wrong for them to not want to have a kid with that disorder. It's not, I think as long as they don't hurt others or mistreat others who have that condition and they maybe removed it from their child, I don't know if I would see that necessarily as a bad thing. Because if it's going to be harder for them to raise the kid and give the kid what they need, in a sense, and raising them, I almost feel like that
Yeah.
would be worse for the kid, if that makes sense. But I definitely don't think we should, like, I don't feel anybody should perceive those as bad things, especially those two. Like, depression, I
Mhm.
understand. Obviously, we don't want anyone to experience depression. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to say there are no positives to, because I know some people can get very creative with their depression, but it
Mhm.
obviously can be a very bad thing too. So I think there's good and bads of everything. And I think as parents, we should, if we were able to have the choice, I don't think it would be a bad thing to make that decision for our kids. And I don't think we should hate people who make those decisions either. It can definitely, like, if my friend maybe was like, I'm gonna get rid of the autism gene in my kid or something, like, maybe, or like ADHD, I could definitely see maybe if I took that personally, then I'd be mad at them. But
Yeah.
it's also not about me,
I
you
mean, for
know?
me at least, I could definitely understand why someone might take away ADHD, just because for me, like, of course, I like there
Yeah.
are positive aspects to it, but it's been really debilitating for me in the past. And but I can also understand like why you might think, oh, like you might be offended by that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a valid experience to have. We just can't necessarily, like, you can have that discussion with them 100%. If your friend was maybe going to make that decision, you can have a conversation with them about why, or just talk to them about it. But you can't, I wouldn't, making them feel bad isn't going to change their mind at all.
Right.
But you can have an open discussion with them. And then another thing, the only other thing I guess about that is, my only concern would be if it started to become a genocide in a sense
Yeah.
of those traits, because they are not bad. But I can understand if somebody, like we said, maybe wouldn't want their kid to go through that, but they are not bad things either. So we shouldn't, in a sense, I would be concerned if, I don't know, if the government, I guess, was mandating that that gene be removed from people. That would not be
That
okay
would be
at
bad.
all.
Yeah. I would
Yes,
not be
because
okay with that.
with gene editing, if we ever get to that even aspect of it, I guess, it should be a choice, because, again, it can be a good or bad thing. It's just how you look at it. But I like to try to have an open mind and have an actual open discussion about it. So right now it's kind of more theoretical. I know, like, we just watched CRISPR. Like, I know it exists, but as far as I know, they're not trying to remove anything yet necessarily. Like, I don't know much about it per
Yeah, they're
se, what
just
they're
doing
doing
like
with it.
clinical trials now.
Yeah. And I think right now they're focusing on diseases, which is good, like
Right.
cancer. I think
Yeah, like physical illnesses. Yeah.
yeah, and then and they're looking at it, I think, with Rets, because that's genetic. So genetic disorders, definitely that makes sense
Mhm.
why they would want to address some of those. It's just depending on how far we go, and as long as it doesn't become like an extinction of anything, I would say.
For sure. And all right, I'm gonna go to the next question.
Yeah.
It says, "Is it wrong to change the way your child will look through gene editing?" Now, for me, I'm kind of on the fence about this one because I can kind of see both sides. Like, I can see parents would want the best for their kids, but at the same time, that their kid, like their child, might think like, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or "I wasn't good enough." But
Yeah.
but then again, they could also get mad at their parents for not gene editing their appearance if they're not happy with their appearance. So there really is no winning.
Yeah, and then also it's going to come down to money. That's going to be a big thing too.
Oh yeah,
Like, the rich families are going to have like cheekbones and jaw lines and like the most beautiful eyes, and although we shouldn't even judge people for looks, obviously we should. I think that can be a big concern about it too, that we can definitely
yeah,
have a discussion about some, like, I mean, we're kind of talking about now, but when it actually becomes a reality, I think it would have to be like an open discussion just with everyone in a sense. Like as a society, we need to, in a sense, move away from, because everyone's beautiful. So we shouldn't necessarily want to change looks, but I mean, I wouldn't be like, I think some things, like if my parent, like if this would have been around before I was born and my parents would have wanted me to have like blue eyes, I don't think that is a big deal personally, but
Right.
I think that all comes down
But
to personal opinion
let's say
too.
like you have like, two, let's say you have like two white, let's say you have two, yeah, two white parents, but they want to change their kid's skin color through DNA. Or to
Hmm.
any parents really. But I guess I'm just trying to come up with an example that I didn't finish.
Yeah.
But like two parents who want to like change their kid's race, like through genetics, or at least their skin pigmentation.
Are you
I guess I'm trying to think about this myself too. I don't even know.
I think it would depend on the reasoning. Like,
Yeah,
why are you doing that? I
that's
guess
true.
I don't see anything inherently wrong with it. Like, if my parent, like, sometimes I wish I was a little tanner. Like, I don't know, I
Yeah.
wish I actually tanned instead of burned. But that's a me thing, not my parents. Like, my parents
Right.
don't. Obviously, my parents love me for who I am. Um, I guess honestly, it would just come down to the rationale as to why.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it would be a little odd, I feel like, but I wouldn't. I honestly also think we also need to get rid of, like, not get rid of race, but just not see race at all. So
Yeah.
then it would come down to why are you, like, why does it matter what their race is in a sense? Um,
That would
but I
be
can
nice
obviously
if
see
we
right
looked
now
at
in this
it.
society, if people, although I don't know how widespread. I mean, I don't know, because obviously, but if somebody wanted their kid to be white in a sense, because in a sense white people have more privilege,
Right.
so I could see that
That's kind of what
aspect,
I
but
was
I also
thinking.
think we need to get rid of that in general, just that structure in
Yeah.
general, we because otherwise we're just enabling it if we allow that too. But I'm not saying that if somebody still wanted, if we, as long as we dismantle that structure, then I don't think it matters. Like if you still
That's
want to
well, yeah.
change your kid's skin color, then that's fine. I mean, I still don't, but that would be a personal
Okay.
decision, opinion, I guess. I
I've
don't
got
know
a
why, but
hypothetical for you.
okay.
This might be kind of a funny one, but okay. Like, what if you had two white parents who wanted to make their child black so that they could get more scholarships? Like, what if that was their reasoning? Like, get
Um,
like affirmative action scholarships or whatever. Because I could
I'd have
definitely
to
see
look.
that becoming a thing.
Yeah, but I don't even think. I think because you know how the Supreme Court was looking into affirmative action, like
Oh
that's
yeah,
like
aren't
on
they
their
removing
docket.
it or something soon?
I think so. But
No.
honestly, that if I'd have to look into it. I'm not going to claim that I know a lot about it, but I remember I saw somewhere that that actually benefited white women more than races, because prior to that, like if we're going based off of GPA and stuff, Asians a lot of times will have be just smarter in general, with grade.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a stereotype too, but it also is just something that
Well, I
people have
think that's
noticed.
just a cultural thing too, partially. Like just
Yeah,
how ingrained like studying is into the culture.
yeah. Um, but so they were getting like into colleges more frequently than anyone else, and not that that's a bad thing. It's not. I think again, college itself needs to be restructured too.
Yeah.
I So I guess affirmative action to me isn't like, I don't have a strong opinions on
Yeah.
it as a thing, because I don't even know if it truly benefited who it was technically supposed to benefit in
Right.
a sense. But I also think colleges just need to expand. Like they shouldn't. Well, college should be free, and I know people are gonna ask like, well, how can college be free? How are you gonna pay? I don't know. I don't have the plans for that, but it should be free because education should be free. We shouldn't, if we want to increase our society and make it better and make us smarter, make Americans smarter, then we should have free education. That's
Yeah.
just a given. Like, how are we supposed to get smarter than these other? Although I don't really think we should be fighting with other countries on who's the smartest, anyways. But I know that's some people's ideology. So if that's what you want, then why wouldn't we want college to be free for everyone? If we want Americans to be smarter, you know? But we also then need to address, because I'm assuming a lot of these colleges, or at least I would hope the reason that they have a limit on how many people they accept is because so that they don't overwhelm the teachers. So then we would also need to get more teachers in a sense.
Yeah.
Which kind of comes down to healthcare too, because healthcare has a shortage. I think there's a shortage just in a lot of fields right now, which whether it's manufactured or organic, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But either way, I think that, so I guess back to your question. I guess I don't really think it's gonna, like, if we left affirmative action in and somebody wanted to do that to benefit from it, I guess again it's feeding into the system, which we need to dismantle anyways. So I guess I wouldn't ever tell someone no, because I don't really feel like that's my right, but I would just want them to understand at least that maybe they are in a sense enabling the system, because they're still allowing it to exist by doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell them like you're, because I understand they want the best for their kid too. So that's partly why they're doing it. It's not like a malicious thing per se. But I would just, we need to dismantle the system as a society, those systems as a society.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, again, it would come down to choice, is what I would say.
For sure. Okay, I've got one more question here.
Okay.
And I think I know your answer to it already, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. Okay, is it wrong to change someone's sexual orientation through gene editing? I would say yes. That would be problematic because there's nothing wrong with not being straight, and it really doesn't serve a purpose other than to please the parents, like in this day and age. I mean, not saying that, like, you know, LGBTQ plus people, like, it's not like we're getting treated super, like, completely equally, but like, I just think that, like, ultimately, if a parent were to make that decision, it would ultimately be to please the parents more than to help the child. And
Yeah,
I think parents should work towards accepting their child the way they are. And especially because most of the suicides and like queer teens are from families who are not supportive of them.
yeah. So I think again that is hard because to me, I don't know if I would want to force, because I know it. I'm not saying, I know all Christians are not against LGBTQ, but I don't know how I would feel forcing an LGBTQ child to be raised by a Christian family just to try to, because that's not gonna. So I disagree with it 100%, obviously, but
Yeah, and I guess
I also.
I think that if you're going to have a child, like, you shouldn't even have a child if you're not gonna love them for who they are, like no matter what.
100%.
Like if you don't believe in like gay and trans rights and everything like that, like if you or you don't think they should even exist, like you shouldn't even have kids, honestly,
Yeah,
because
I
that's
agree
always a
with that.
possibility.
And that's why we need to dismantle the system still. So I think a lot of gene editing, these ethical concerns come from the system
Yeah, I
that
come from
we as a
societal
society have
expectations, and
created.
yeah,
Yes. Because, like,
for sure.
I can understand, obviously, like for me, growing up gay, I wish that, like, I would have been able to have the relationships that my peers were having, and it wasn't a fun time, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone else. But I do think as society, we are getting better about it. So I can see the concern about where if we start to allow people to, I don't even know if is LG, like, is it even a genetic thing? Is it genetics?
I've heard both things. I don't know what the most
Oh,
recent
okay.
science is. I'm gonna look it up though, because I am curious myself.
Okay. But regardless, if it is genetics, if we start to allow it, again, it's because I do think as a society we are truly becoming more accepting, because I see kids, I would say queer kids, who are actually able to have some relationships, and that's amazing to see.
Okay, so it
Because
says studies comparing identical and fraternal twins suggest there's some heritable component to homosexuality, but no one believes that a single gene or genes, um, I'm assuming it says, determine sexual identity.
okay,
So it's heritable, but it's not necessarily genetic.
yeah, okay. So that, but even if it was genetic, I do think that it would be wrong, personally, to remove that. But it would also be hard for me to say that we should force someone who we know is going to harass the kid or not love them anymore and throw them out on the street if they did turn out to be gay. And I agree with you 100%. If you aren't going to love your kids, you should not have parent. You should not be a parent, because it's, I don't
Oh,
know.
I was, yeah, okay. I was saying, yeah, even if it's not genetic, it's still, I mean, at least in my opinion, as a bisexual person, I would say I was born that way. Like, it's not really in. I mean, expressing yourself is like your ability to express your sexuality is environmental, but your actual sexual orientation is not really environmental.
Yeah. So the fact that I like men is not a choice, but I can choose not to pursue that, but that is wrong, because that would not be me being me, you know?
Right.
So I get when they try to claim it's a choice, but it's not an actual choice. But to try to fit into this fake societal structure where LGBT, like, these are viewed as wrong, is a choice, but that's wrong. We need to move on from that, because it is not a choice on who you like as a sexual orientation, just as gender identity is not a choice. It's just something that you are, if that makes sense.
Right.
But
Exactly.
some people may choose not to be who they are because it would put them in kind of a dangerous situation in a sense.
Yeah.
But
Or
that
they
does
might
not
just want to
mean,
accept who they are.
yes, that too. But that does not make sexual identity or sexual orientation or gender identity a choice. Not
Right.
truly. Um so but yeah, I do think it would be so I think it would be wrong to obviously remove that. I would never remove that, because I don't see anything wrong with myself either.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree.
And as a society, I think we're getting better. So,
We're working on it.
yes. And I even think some churches are getting a tiny bit, but not great at all by any means. They need to,
There's some decent churches out
yes,
there,
there are
but
some. And like, obviously, not all religious people are homophobic or anything either. So I would never think that. Um, yeah, I guess that one is, I mean, yes, I would say it is wrong, obviously, but it's just also hard to, like, it would be hard knowing that still someone is because obviously I do feel, even if 99% of the world accepts it, there will still always be 1% that doesn't. And it's just,
exactly. Yeah.
I still feel deeply for those kids that have to grow up in that situation, and I
Yeah.
don't ever want anyone to have to go through that. But so that's the only hard part about it. Like, I almost would rather just let those awful people, get rid of that gene, if you will. But I know that a majority of the world doesn't feel that way, and that gives me hope. So, and obviously, we as a community can just support each other. So, even if kids still have to grow up like that, we still love them. So, they aren't unloved, if that makes sense. So, it's still at least good knowing that.
For sure. And that was all my questions.
And that was all you had to, like,
Yeah.
point wise. Okay. So, yeah, I think gene editing is it's still I haven't really heard it talked about much. Like I feel like a couple of years ago it was like I heard it talked about all the time, but
Yeah.
so it's definitely, I think it's still controversial. It just maybe there were breakthroughs back then that people were concerned. Like it was more of a topic because
Yeah,
it
I think
was.
that's when they were discovering more about it.
Oh, okay. So maybe there haven't been many breakthroughs because I think I don't know. Were stem cells also part of gene editing, or was that its own thing, or is
I
it
think
kind
stem
of
cells are different. I think this
okay?
because the stem cells are more just like you're
We can
adding more
create
cells.
like
You're not
organs and
changing the
stuff.
DNA.
Okay. Because I know, like, also they were thinking of using stem cells to make like artificial pancreases and stuff, but then obviously
Right.
people are
People are
that's
fucking stupid and I could have
controversial.
had a brand spanking new pancreas.
Yeah, but maybe we could talk about that sometime too.
We should
Stem
definitely
cells,
talk about
but
that sometime.
so it's still a controversial topic, I would say, gene editing, and as I understand, there's a lot of ethical things that you could think about it, and obviously if it ever my biggest concern would be if it led to genocide of anything. I mean,
Yeah.
a genocide of cancer might not be the worst thing. Sorry, cancer, but you're kind of you're not great. So, but
But of any
like,
group of people, though.
yes, that would be wrong. That would be my biggest concern. So we would definitely have to maybe come up with a plan or a plan, I don't know, but or a system where that was not allowed at all, where that couldn't happen. I don't know how,
Right.
but maybe like policies or something would have to be written legislation that bans that, like the requirement of getting rid of a certain trait or
For sure.
group of people. So there, I can understand concerns, but I do think that I don't think it's a bad thing. Nothing is inherently bad or good, I would say. So I think it's something that we should all be open to talking about, and we can have our emotions about it, but I think we should also try to think a little bit logically about it too. So it's always good to just be open to it, and it doesn't mean that you have to like it, but at least we can have a conversation about it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But if you guys want to let us know your thoughts on gene editing, you can leave a comment below on this video. And also, don't forget to leave a comment below letting us know what other topics you might want us to discuss in future episodes.
Yeah, and you can reach us on here right here on YouTube. You can also reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And we do some Twitch live streams now.
Yes, so make sure to join those. We'll post an announcement on our social media letting you know. So to get that announcement, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And we will see you next time.